Well, let's get more now on those floods and the research commissioned by Sky News that found contaminated floodwater in Somerset. Well, joining me now is Jeff Charlton, who's an expert in flood damage and toxic mould control. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk about the research, first of all, that Sky News had done on this floodwater from the Somerset levels, which found that it contained 60 times the recommended maximum amount of bacteria for water. Is that what you would expect normally to happen in floodwater like this?
Yeah, this type of flood event is called a blackwater flood. The water's flowed over fertilised ground, over farmland, through sewers, through waste courses, and it's expected to pick up over 120 different types of bacteria and over 1,000 types of different virus. So everybody's fully aware, everybody in the industry is fully aware that this is a very nasty soup that's gone into people's homes.
Well, that's right, and homeowners, obviously, it's being stressed that they should take precautions when dealing with that floodwater and make common sense decisions over that. But it's not just while the water is there, is it? There are problems even once the water's received.
No, it's not. The home becomes an actual breeding ground for bioamplification of mould, of bacteria, and these things will flourish in a home, especially as you start to dry it out and you raise the temperatures. You're only going to get evaporation from wet materials if you raise temperatures. That becomes an ideal environment for bacteria and mould growth. Problem we've got is, typically the CIRIA, which is the Construction Industry Research Advisory Service, they actually say that contractors shouldn't enter a building that's been wet for more than 2 or 3 days without wearing a full face mask with toxic cartridges in. That's how much that the industry recognises how bad this can be. And the Environment Agency recently paid for a code of practice to be written for this type of event, for what would you do or what should people expect when their home's been flooded. And the Environment Agency paid the British Standard Institute to organise and write this. I was part of the technical committee on that. And there's a code of practice where this should be tested. People that are involved, people that understand building forensics should go in and start to assess the health risk of the occupants and also the levels of contamination.
Well, yes, so what can be done? Because as you say, the instinct would be to get the heat on to dry it out. But if you say that causes problems as well, how do you make sure that your home is safe once it's been flooded? Well,
it really needs, as I say, it needs someone that deals with building forensics to understand the risks, the hazards that's in the property, that type of event. And what's more important is the actual risks of the occupants. Now, if we've got children under 2 who haven't developed an immune system yet, or people over 65 where their immune system's starting to fail, people that are on chemotherapy, radiotherapy, even long-term prescription drugs, these people are at a higher or an elevated risk to other people.
And what about the cost implications? Because the government is bringing in a new deal next year that's going to put a cap on insurance premiums for many homeowners. But in the meantime, in premiums risk going up, I guess. And then presumably there's a cost of certifying your house to show that it's safe as well. Is that
well? Funny enough, the PAS 64, which, as I say, the Environment Agency paid for, that actually costs £70 for people, the public, to buy. You can, if you Google PAS 64, you'll get some free downloads on that. But the issue there is in there, it says that there should be a verification of an outcome, because when people come to sell their homes, it's bad enough that it's been flooded, but they've got to declare any major event that has a possible health effect or damage or economic value, economic effects on the value of their home. So they've got to declare it to the purchaser. Well, the purchaser's straight away going to say, can I see a clearance certificate? Can I see that this has been dried properly and that it's sanitised properly?
OK, Jeff Charlton, all the more reason to feel sympathetic to all those poor people whose homes have been flooded.
Yeah.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Yesterday, research commissioned by Sky News found that a sample of floodwater taken on the Somerset levels contained 60 times the recommended level of bacteria for agricultural water. So does it present a risk to public health? Well, I'm joined by Professor Virginia Murray, the head of extreme events at Public Health England. Very good to talk to you, Professor Murray. Well, I'll put that question straight to you. Given those levels of contamination of bacteria, is it a risk to public health?
Dermot, you've done something that is very interesting. But we know floodwater samples will contain bacteria that was going to be found in the outdoor environment. We've always known this. Thank you for showing it, but we know it's a real problem. So we're really concerned that people should be very much aware of our public health advice to minimise their exposure to floodwater. It really is important to wash their hands, to be really careful about careful washing, to disinfect and wash all the food preparation surfaces, and to make sure that they don't eat food or drink water that could have been contaminated by floodwater. It's really vital because we've known these risks exist for a long time. Our experience from previous floods have been really key. When people have followed our public health advice, we have been very reassured that the evidence shows that they do not develop the gastrointestinal infections that we're really anxious about. So what you have done is to raise awareness of how vulnerable people are if they are exposed to this floodwater. We know the floodwater is not designed for bathing. We know the floodwater is not designed for drinking. It is not safe. But we do know that tap water is safe. And if people follow our advice, we feel that they should be able to look after themselves, even if they have been traumatised and living in such difficult circumstances as these people in Somerset and elsewhere around the country have been.
Just touch on some of the conditions that people might develop if they don't take those precautions.
Well, there are a whole range of problems that people can have, from gastrointestinal infections that could be associated with the water. There's also the risk of rodent-borne infections that could exist. That usually comes in a bit later, which is why people again should wash their hands to minimise contact with any of the floodwater, to minimise the chance of them getting that. But equally, there's the risk of vector-borne. But at the moment, the weather's not encouraging vectors, thank goodness, and it's quite cold. But we really are anxious to keep really close public health surveillance and awareness of all these problems to minimise harm, and getting out the advice, the messages, our leaflets, working really closely with our frontline partners is crucial to make this happen, as is all our normal public health surveillance, which we work really closely with NHS England on doing.
You mentioned drinking water. Why is that not contaminated? Why shouldn't you be boiling that or using bottled water? Why is that okay?
The current information we have, because there's ongoing daily routine risk assessment going forward, shows that the tap water from the drinking water supplies, the mains water, is, thank goodness, remains safe.
And what about the concerns and the threat beyond the subsidence of the waters? There's an awful lot of contamination, mess, detritus. You still have to take care under those circumstances as you're cleaning up and repairing and making good.
Absolutely. It is crucial, and that's why it's so tough, because this goes on and on and on. There's a lot of guidance sitting here inside our leaflet, but equally it can be made much more tailor-made to the local circumstance. How to clean up is mentioned, how to deal with some of the recovery issues. It is so difficult. It's really vital that people follow the best guidance, the best evidence, and can implement it locally in a way that they feel comfortable with.
Now, how do you disseminate this information? Obviously, there's websites, there's leaflets. Well, a lot of those things might not be accessible to people, or they might not be working. Do you have people on the ground spreading the word?
We are working with all our local partners. All our local frontline health partners, our emergency service partners, they have been distributing these leaflets, and we've had huge support from them right at the front line.
Well, Professor Murray, thank you very much indeed for that advice. Professor Virginia Murray there. Now we want to go back